Before 1938, when oil wasn't discovered in Saudi Arabia, life wasn't easy for a majority of Saudis. Poverty and starvation were rampant in the harsh desert climate of Arabian Peninsula. In the resource-starved land, people were dependent on primitive farming of dates and cereals. Other sources of income were labor-intensive tasks such as construction and vocational trades, sheep and camel herding, and collecting firewood. Now, 80 years after the discovery of oil, with a per capita GDP of $54,000, Saudi Arabia is the 14th richest country in the world. With world-class metros, highways, skyscrapers and airports, Saudi Arabia is thriving. On top of that, with very high human development, Saudi Arabia ranks 36th worldwide in the United Nations Human Development Index. That makes Saudi Arabia a shining example of how oil can transform a nation. But for majority of Nigerians, oil isn't a blessing. Before we understand why oil is a curse rather than a blessing for Nigeria, it's important to understand Nigeria after all. Nigeria is located on the western coast of Africa. With 206 million inhabitants, Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa and the 7th most populous country in the world. And according to UN, it will have more people than the US by 2050. In addition to that, Nigeria has the largest economy in Africa and 27th largest in the whole world. Oil was first discovered in Nigeria in 1956. During that time, while Muslim Hausas were dominant in northern Nigeria, Christian Igbos were dominant in eastern Nigeria. Due to ethnic and religious conflicts between the two communities, when Hausas began killing minority Igbos in northern Nigeria, thousands of Igbos fled to the eastern Nigeria where they were in majority. Soon Igbos established their sovereign country, Republic of Biafra, comprising several states of eastern Nigeria. During that time, majority of the discovered oil fields of erstwhile undivided Nigeria were located in Biafra. War broke out between Biafra and Nigeria in 1967, and by 1970, Nigeria's superior military captured Biafra completely. The end of Biafra civil war led to oil boom in the late 60s, and oil sector became one of the major sources of Nigeria's earnings. Soon, Nigeria's military took control of the state and economy. Since oil belonged to the state, holding public office became the route to wealth. On 21st January 2020, Nigeria's anti-graft agency filed corruption charges against a former justice minister over $1.3 billion oil scandal. The oil scandal, which involves international oil majors Shell and Eni, is said to be the biggest corporate bribery of all time. Shell and Eni have been accused of paying a bribery of $1.3 billion to get the contract of an oil field OPL 225, which has an estimated 9 billion barrels of reserves. Nigeria's government earns revenues from the oil business through a share of oil profits, royalties, and tax paid by the companies involved in the oil business. But companies often report manipulated production cost and production volumes and use incorrect prices for oil sales in their tax returns. Government and companies hide this information from the public, citing confidentiality clauses. On the other hand, Nigeria's onshore oil sector is governed by joint ventures. A joint venture involves state-owned Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) and a private company. This requires NNPC to contribute money equally to the business as its partner in the joint ventures. But NNPC always fails to pay its share. So the other partner, which is a private company, pays for NNPC. This in turn led to massive tax concessions for the company from the government, and NNPC gets a little share of the profit made from the business. Corruption, which has got institutionalized over the years, is deep entrenched in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. Corruption in Nigeria's oil and gas sector happens through 5 ways: allocation of contracts and licenses, bottlenecks and inefficiencies in the regulatory mechanisms, bunkering, exportation of crude and importation of refined products. Before 1999, during the time of military rule, most licenses for exploration and production of oil were awarded at the discretion of Commander-in-Chief of Military. And now Nigeria's Petroleum Act gives the Minister of Petroleum absolute authority to award the licenses. Government officials give contracts to companies in which they have a financial stake, and officials give preference to companies owned by their allies and friends, and then seek repayment through other business deals or political favors. As in case of most of the developing countries, allocation of licenses and contracts in Nigeria meet with bureaucratic hurdles and delays. Such delays create the motive and opportunity for paying bribes to speed along the procedures. Bunkering, which means the theft of crude oil directly from pipelines, flow stations and export facilities, is prevalent across Nigeria. Around 100 to 200,000 barrels per day get lost via bunkering in Nigeria, which equals to the entire oil production of Cameroon in a day. Even government and oil companies' representatives are involved in bunkering activities. Nigeria's state-owned NNPC issues export contracts to international oil trading companies, several NNPC affiliated companies, and a few foreign governments. The traders buy crude oil from NNPC at market price and sell it onto refineries and other buyers worldwide. Similarly, NNPC also award licenses to import refined petroleum products such as diesel, kerosene, and petrol. Lack of transparency in such export and import transactions create considerable opportunities for corruption. With reserves estimated at 37.2 billion barrels and production at 2.28 million barrels a day, Nigeria is the largest oil producer in Africa and 13th largest in the world. But such an abundance of oil reserves doesn't translate into better living standards for Nigerians. With 87 million Nigerians living in extreme poverty, Nigeria recently overtook India as the country with most people in poverty. While 44 Indians are being taken out of poverty in every minute, in that time 6 Nigerians are being added to the poor category, and that too is reflected in Nigeria's 157th rank in United Nations Human Development Index. When a country has a maximum crude oil production capacity of 2.5 million barrels a day, its people should swim in petrol. No, that is simply not the case for Nigeria. Nigeria is the only member country in the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries that imports petrol, and is currently the largest importer of premium motor spirit. It's really strange to know that a resource-rich country like Nigeria is importing the products of its resources. Yet, that is the truth of most African countries. The simple reason is that Nigeria doesn't have enough oil refineries and existing refineries are not working to their fullest capacity. The result is that Nigeria loses billions of dollars on fuel imports. According to a UN report, Nigeria lost $2.8 billion in revenues in 2018, mainly due to oil-related crimes. Insurgency and oil fields go hand in hand in Nigeria. Niger Delta, which is Africa's biggest oil and gas producing region, accounts for more than 75% of Nigeria's export earnings. The region is also a hotbed for oil-related crimes. As recently as in 2016, a new militant group, the Niger Delta Avengers, a name which sounds like the characters of a superhero comic book, have emerged in Nigeria. The Niger Delta Avengers have attacked oil-producing facilities in the Delta, causing the shutdown of oil terminals and a fall in Nigeria's oil production to its lowest in 20 years. Violent conflicts are largely responsible to the backwardness of nations. But these violent conflicts in Nigeria in turn are consequences of rampant poverty, inequality, corruption, unemployment and poor governance. Before the discovery of oil in 1956, Nigeria was an agrarian economy. In 1960, agricultural products such as palm oil and cacao beans made up nearly all Nigeria's exports. Today, they barely register as trade items. Africa's most populous country with 206 million people has gone from being self-sufficient in food to importing food more than it produces. On 10 November 1995, environmental and human rights activist Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 community leaders were executed by the Nigerian state because they were leading a protest movement against the ecological disaster caused by oil spills. The extent of the problem of oil spills in Nigeria can be gauged from the fact that more oil is spilled from Niger Delta's network of terminals, pipes, pumping stations and oil platforms every year than has been lost in the Gulf of Mexico. With 606 oil fields, the Niger Delta supplies 40% of all the crude the US imports, and at the same time is infamous for being the world's oil pollution capital. Life expectancy in Niger Delta's rural communities has fallen to little more than 40 years over the past 2 generations. Oil spills have devastated the lives of many Nigerians by destroying their farmland and poisoning the water they drink. If you like this video, then hit the like button, drop in your comments below, subscribe to Very Well Informed and press the bell icon to keep yourself very well informed.